Math. Today's lesson is for Math 7. It is September 29th, 2020. And in today's lesson, we're looking at Lesson 5 out of our textbook. And our topic today is going to be rules for operations with mixed numbers and fractions. Okay. So our essential question, which we always start out with one, is how do I add, subtract, multiply, or divide mixed numbers? And again, those mixed numbers, aka mixed fractions. Please pause this at any point in time in which you need to catch up, slow down, take notes, anything like that. That's what this video is for. So once again, if I'm ever going too fast in class, please let me know. But you can always go ahead and refer back to this video to review our lesson 2. All right, here we go. So our first section that we are going to be talking about today is adding and subtracting mixed fractions and numbers, specifically the adding and subtracting part. Now in this lesson, we will be talking about all of the math properties, add, subtract, multiply, divide. But in this first section of our notes, it's going to be on adding and subtracting. Okay. Now when we add and subtract, I did go ahead and create a couple of steps for you because it seems to help you when you've got a linear progression, meaning we go from point A to point B to point C. Okay. Now here we go. So when we're taking a look at this, step number 1 is that we're going to write each mixed number as an improper fraction. So we're going to convert each one of our mixed numbers into an improper fraction. So if I have 1 1/3, I'm going to change that to 4/3. Then if I need to, I'm going to find a common denominator. Now I'm going to add on to here if needed. We won't always need a common denominator, but we will sometimes, okay? So again, find a common denom if needed. Step 3. We're going to go ahead and add or subtract the numerators then. Remember, anything you change on the bottom, you also have to change up top. So as you're going through this, make sure that when you are adding or subtracting your numerators, if you needed to change the denom, you needed to change your numerator as well, so make sure that that applies. And again, that was our step 3. So we're going to add or subtract the the numerators. Now in step 4, we're going to simplify if possible. Now the reason why we're not going to add or subtract our denominators is because we don't need to. Once they are the same, they stay the same. So we are always going to go ahead and simplify our fractions if needed. Okay. Now, for this today, I do have 2 practice problems for you, and we are going to go ahead and work on these together. Now, keeping these 4 steps in mind, we're going to go ahead and try these. So, to begin with, we are going to have 2 1/4 and 1 7/8, and then we have 8 and 5 1/3. Now, I'm going to scooch this up so I can go ahead and do my work on this separate sheet of paper so you guys don't see this tomorrow when I'm going over it in class like we had the other day. All right, so here we go. So I have 2 1/4 plus 1 7/8 as practice problem number 1. I'm going to follow step 1 and write each mixed number as an improper fraction. So this is going to become 4 times 2, which is 8, plus 1, which gives me 9. So I have 9 over 4 plus 8 times 1, which would be 8, plus 7, which is 15. So I'm going to have 9/4 plus 15/8. I'm going to switch over to a pen real quickly so you guys can see this a little bit better. There we go. Now what I need to do is look for a common denominator because neither one of these are both 8 or 4. What I can do, though, is I can keep my 15/8 the same. So I'm going to write this as 15 over 8. Now, the reason why I'm going to keep that the same is because 4 can go into 8. So I'm going to times this by 2. I'm going to times this by 2 as well. Now, 9 times 2 is 18, so I'm going to have 18 over 8, and I'm going to add those 2 together. Now, my step 3 was that we were going to add or subtract the numerators. So here, I'm going to go ahead and add 18 and 15, sorry about that. And 18 and 15 together are going to give me 33. So I'm going to go 33 over 8. And now I need to check to see if I can simplify this. Now, me simplifying it could be reducing it and making it into a smaller improper fraction, or, which is the preferred method, turning this now into a mixed fraction. So 8 can go into 33 4 whole times, and when we do that, 8 times 4 is 32. So then I've used up 32 of my 33 parts, leaving me with 1 part remaining. So my answer would be 4 1/8. Okay. All right. Now, if you need to go back through and re-watch this practice problem, please go ahead and do that. That's the great thing about this video. You can watch it as many times or as few times as you need to. You can just watch it simply for a refresher or go from there. All right, now taking a look at practice problem number 2. We have 8 minus 5 1/3. Now, when we talk about 8, it's a whole number. We can turn any whole number by putting a fraction of 1 underneath it. So I actually have 8 over 1 as my improper fraction. And once again, I'm going to go 3 times 5, which would give me 15. And I'm going to add 1, which is going to give me 16. So I have 16 over 3, and I have 8 over 1. Now, once again, I need to find a common denominator. A common denominator that both of these can have is 3. So I'm going to leave my 16/3 by itself, and I'm going to times my 8 over 1 by 3 on the bottom and by 3 on the top. Now 8 times 3 is 24, so I get 24 over 3 minus 16 over 3. Now when I go 24 minus 16, which is my third step, I'm going to go ahead and get 8 over 3. Now, I can't simplify 8/3 into a smaller improper fraction, but I can turn it into a strong mixed number. And when I do that, 3 can go into 8 2 times. 3 stays as my remainder. And then 8 times 3, well, that's 6. So I've used up 6 of my 8 parts, leaving me with 2 pieces remaining. So my final answer is 2 2/3. Okay. All right. So those are going to be our answers for practice problem number 1 and practice problem number 2. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to move into multiplying. Now, when we multiply mixed numbers, this is actually, in my opinion, the multiplication and the division, that's a lot simpler than simply doing our adding or subtracting fractions. Because when we have to add or subtract mixed numbers, we have to go ahead and make sure that everything has a common denominator. We don't have to do that when we are multiplying or dividing mixed numbers. So in this section, we are going to talk about multiplying mixed numbers, and we're going to do a couple of examples. Our first step when we are writing mixed numbers or multiplying them is the same as number 1. In our adding and subtracting, we are going to write each mixed number as an improper fraction. So again, you're going to see that a lot. Write each mixed number as an improper fraction. Step 2, I'm going to multiply the numerators. That's pretty simple. Once they're in that fraction-looking form and not this whole mixed number thing, it makes our lives a lot easier. So then go ahead and multiply the numerators. Once you've multiplied the numerators, you're going to multiply the denominators. You don't have to make any changes to them, and that's the wonderful thing about multiplying fractions. And then, for step number 4, we always want to simplify if possible. Most of the time, when you are multiplying these mixed numbers, you will have to simplify, so always put it in that simplest form. Okay? All right, so for this, we only have one practice problem, and that one's this one here. 2 1/6 times 3/10. Now, I went ahead and just put one example in here because multiplying mixed numbers is a lot simpler than adding or subtracting them, so you can use this as a reference. Now, once again, in step number 1, we're going to write each mixed number as an improper fraction. So I've got one mixed number here, and that's 2 1/6. I'm going to go 2 times 6, which is 12, plus 1, which is 13. So I'm going to get 13 over 6, and now I'm going to simply times that by 3/10. Now I don't have to do anything to the 3/10 besides write it down because it's not a mixed number. It's already in a fraction form. Now I'm going to do step 2, and I'm going to multiply those numerators. So I'm going to go 3 times 13. That's going to give me 39. And 6 times 10, which is my denominators, which I'm now going to multiply, is going to give me 60. So I have 39 over 60. I'm now going to go through and simplify it if possible. There happens to be one number that can go into both 39 and 60, and that is 3. So I'm going to divide each one of these by 3. And when I do that, I'm going to get 13 over 20. Now I can't go any further, so that is my final answer. 13 over 20. Now once again, if you need to rewatch this video at any point, please go ahead and do that. All right? So just keep that in mind as you're working through these. All right, now our very last section that we're going to be working on today is on dividing mixed numbers. Dividing mixed numbers is once again very, very similar to our multiplying of fractions, okay? The one big thing here that you're going to need to remember is always flip that second fraction. Okay, here we go. So when we are multiplying, or in this case, dividing mixed numbers, we have the same step for this as well. We are going to go ahead and write each mixed number as an improper fraction. Same thing in all 3 areas. Always start out with our mixed numbers. When we add, subtract, multiply, divide, always start out by converting it into an improper fraction. You're going to get really good at doing that. Our second step is we're going to keep, change, flip. Now we talked about this in lesson 4 with our keep, change, flip, where we keep the first fraction, we change the sign, we flip the second fraction. If you need a refresher on that, go back and look at lesson 4. Now our third step is that we are going to go ahead and multiply the numerators and the denominators. Okay? So again, multiply the nums, the numerators, and the denoms, the denominators. Multiply straight across, just like you did on the multiplying fractions part. Okay? Now the very last part of this is you're going to go ahead and simplify if possible. Okay, remember, we always want to go ahead and try and simplify. Simplifying is our happy place. Okay. Now, this is our last practice problem of today, and it says 12 3/4 divided by 6. All right. So 12 3/4, once again, step 1, it says turn this into an improper fraction from a mixed fraction. So I'm going to go 4 times 12. Which gives me 48, and I'm going to add 3, which is going to give me 51. So I'm going to have 51 over 4, and I'm going to have that divided by 6. Now I need to turn my 6 into a fraction, and I can do that by putting a 1 underneath it. Now, step 2. I'm going to go ahead and do my keep, my change, my flip. So I'm going to keep my first fraction, which is 51 over 4. I'm going to change my sign to multiplication, and now I'm going to flip my second fraction. So I have 1 over 6 instead of 6 over 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply across. I'm going to go 51 times 1, which is going to happen to be 51. And I'm going to go 4 times 6, which is 24. Now there happens to be one number that can go into both 51 and 24. To make it smaller. And that number happens to be 3. So I'm going to divide each one of these by 3. And when I do that, I'm going to get 17 over 8. Now what I have to do is once again, turn this into a mixed fraction again. If it starts out in a mixed fraction, we want to keep it in a mixed fraction as our final answer. So then, 8 can go into 17 2 whole times, 2 times 8 is 16, which means I've used up 16 of the 17 parts. I'm now going to go 1 over 8. So 2 1/8 is our final answer. Okay. Now again, at any point, if you need to go back through, rewatch this video, pause it, do whatever you need to. That's the great thing about this, is that you have the opportunity to speak up for yourself, advocate for yourself, okay, and use this extra time that you'll have in class today to go ahead and get this done. Because we're going to be doing the notes in class on the 29th. You'll start the assignment on the 29th, and then I will be giving you additional time in class on October 1st, which is Thursday, to go ahead and finish the assignment before we happen to have a quiz. All right? So if you need anything at all, please reach out to me. Okay? Thank you so very much for watching. This has been Mrs. Ross Does Math.